Northway? Yeah. I am so pumped to be a part of this series right now, especially as our Family Matters pastor. This whole around the table idea is special and near and dear to my heart and to my family's heart. And I'm also excited to be a part of Northway. I mean, being fairly new still on staff, we just moved here from Ohio after being gone out of the great Pittsburgh region for the last 10 years. We were gone, and we just moved back late January, early February. And if you've moved recently, you know what a chore that is, right? Yeah, 10 years, you accumulate a lot of junk, right? And it's your job because you realize you're going to have to pay to bring all that junk with you. And so you got to get rid of and donate whatever you can to bring as little as you can and only what you need to your new house. And so we did that. We went through that process as we were prepping to move. And while we did that, my wife and I, we had one of these moments. You know, Chevy Chase, Clark Griswold in Christmas Vacation moments where he falls through the attic. There it is right there. He gets caught up looking at photos. I had that moment. I saw my kids from years ago, and then I saw a current picture of them. It's going to pop up right on the screens there, and this is what I saw. I saw, boy, have they grown. They're not little kids anymore. And while I'm looking at that, and I'm thinking about Family Matters and being a pastor at Northway, and I'm thinking about everything I'm reading, and I'm hearing all that unwanted advice that parents give you when they first find out that you're going to have a child. You don't ask for it, but they feel obliged to give it to you. You know, all that stuff is flying through my head, and what stuck out the most was the fact that your kids and my kids, all of our kids, no matter how different they are, they all go through some very distinct phases or stages of life, don't they? It's fairly predictable. You can almost see it coming before it arrives, and if you think about it, it's really important to know as we work with kids, as we have children of our own, as we serve in Family Matters. And so I want to share them with you. The first one is called the early years. And for that, I've got a ball, right? The early years of our kids' lives, when we were kids too, we had a ball. And all we wanted to know is, what can I play with? Life is about fun. It's about wandering around. It's about discovery, about adventure, about exploring. And you just want to play. And there's no time for eating or going to the bathroom or going to bed or brushing your teeth. You just want to play, right? Yeah. And then somehow, some way, you start to grow up a little bit. And you don't necessarily put the toy down, but you pick something else up. All of a sudden, you know what a mirror is, right? And you start to look in it. And you start to deal with things related to your identity. When you hit those middle years, especially in middle school, and my son is in 5th grade, about to be in 6th grade, he's starting to ask this question all the time: who am I really? You start wondering what's cool and what's not cool, what's accepted and what's not accepted, and you start to feel the consequences of social rejection. And that question gets louder and louder and louder, and you look in the mirror looking for answers. Later on, when you move into the later portions of high school, you realize there's a new stage coming, signified by a set of keys, baby. Independence. Where am I going to go? Emphasis is on the word I, right? I'm going to make my path in this world. I'm going to find my way. I'm going to get out from underneath my parents. I'm going to drive somewhere. I'm going to go live somewhere. I'm going to go do something on my own because it's my time. It's my life, right? What can I play with? Who am I? Where am I going to go? What am I going to do? You know, I realized something as I looked at those pictures of my children. I realized that we don't really ever grow up, do we? I mean, those 3 questions are questions we all still ask today, aren't they? In some way, shape, or form, we're trying to figure out how much fun we can have in this life. In some way, shape, or form, we're trying to find purpose or identity and who we really are and what's unique about us and what special contribution can we bring to the world. And in some way, shape, or form, we're trying to make our mark in this world, to be known for something. What am I going to do? We don't ever really grow up. So last week, we kicked off this series called Around the Table. Pastor Scott did a phenomenal job of opening up this idea of family meals and neighborly meals in our community and the part that they play in our lives and how Jesus made meals a priority, right? And Pastor Scott introduced for us the anchor text about the dinner that Jesus had with Matthew and how the Pharisees sort of grumbled at that. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to unpack all of that because Pastor Scott did a phenomenal job. So if you missed last week, jump online, check it out. You won't regret it, okay? But here's what I want to do. I want to read it together. I want to point out one single thing that jumps out as I read the text. Here it is. It's in Matthew 9, verses 9 through 12. It says this: as Jesus passed on from there, he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax booth, and he said to him, "Follow me." And he rose and followed him. And as Jesus reclined at the table in the house, behold, many tax collectors and sinners came and were reclining with Jesus and his disciples. And when the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" But when he heard it, he said, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick." When you look at that passage, do you notice the posture that Jesus and the sinners and the tax collectors took? They were reclining. They weren't curiously passing by, just trying to catch an ear of what was being said. They weren't standing outside kind of gawking. No, they were at the table, sitting around together, reclined. They were comfortable. They were relaxed. They were at rest. They were in a position where they felt free to let their guard down. They were in a spot where they were willing and able to be influenced. Boy, the table has a way of doing that, doesn't it? Meals have a way of allowing and inviting us to let our guard down a bit, to be comfortable, to rest and relax, and to maybe be influenced. Boy, Jesus understood that. He was always having meals with people, and Jesus wasn't the only person that understood that and valued this kind of piece. And my big point that I'm trying to make through all of this, while they were reclining, it points out a single truth, and it's this: truth doesn't seem to matter until it's communicated in a way that matters. Isn't that true? I mean, all the stuff that we're supposed to know and the truth we're supposed to swallow, sometimes it doesn't matter to us until we're ready to hear it. And boy, the table is a place that matters for all of us, isn't it? See, in Acts, when we read about the early followers of Jesus, the people that kind of started this whole movement, the way, the early Christians, the Jesus followers that began this whole thing years ago and that we're a part of right now. We're a part of what they began. They valued meals too. They understood that truth that we needed to hear didn't always matter until we heard it in a way that matters. And that meals, as a family, reclined around the table, was a place that mattered. Check it out in Acts chapter 2. Here's what it says as it's describing their movement. It says, "And they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and the prayers." They devoted themselves to 4 things, right? 4 things. "And awe came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. And all who believed were together and had all things in common." Devoted to 4 things. You know what the word devoted means? I'm sure you do. It's a common word. It's a word we speak in. I looked it up. I had a chance. I looked it up and checked it out in the Greek. Here's what it means a long time ago. It means to attend to something with continuing resoluteness. It's a steadfast and single-minded attention to a course of action. It means it's a priority. It means these 4 things were something that mattered to them, that they did with intentionality, not by accident. They didn't stumble into meals and prayer and fellowship and teaching. They woke up and they scheduled it. When we're devoted to something, it's what we spend our time and our money on because it matters, because it's critical. You know, just as a side, I wonder what our time and our money says about us today. Because the way we spend our time and how we spend our money, it always leaves a trail, doesn't it? I mean, you can check my bank account, you can check my schedule, and you can find out what I'm devoted to. And I could do the same for everybody who's hearing this right now. I wonder how closely our devotion would match their devotion. I read that and I get the scriptures part, I get the teaching, I get the prayer part, I get the fellowship. We have all that in our churches today, right? We have a formal gathering here and all that kind of stuff happens, and we have small groups and we get to do all that. But the meals piece, isn't that one just a little different? Doesn't that one stand out as something that they were steadfast and single-minded about accomplishing and experiencing? Why do you think meals were so important to this early movement of Jesus followers? And by the way, it was more than communion. It was more than just the Lord's Supper. It was an informal gathering at home with great food and things to drink and great laughs and great conversation. It was something that was balancing out all the formal activities of the temple by providing the informal reclining places that everybody wants to have. So why did it matter? Why were they devoted? Out of all the things they could be devoted and committed to, why meals? Well, think about it. Think about the environment that they experienced back then. Following Jesus meant there was going to be a cost to pay. There was very real persecution. There was great criticism and judgment from all their fellow Jews and their peers who weren't sure of this new religion and this new kind of Jesus, this new Savior thing. It wasn't cool or popular. It was not normal to do what they were doing, and there was rejection after rejection. Matter of fact, being out in public, it wasn't a safe place to be if you were a Jesus follower back then. So meals really mattered because they realized that everyone needs a nurse and a medic way more than a judge and a critic. When you face persecution and judgment and criticism and people looking down their nose at you, don't you want someone to help you through it? I know I do. I know life today as an adult with kids is filled with pressure and criticism and judgment. And that truth about everyone needing a nurse and a medic, way more than just a judge or a critic, it's true for our kids as well. For our students that are walking the schools. Think about it. If you look at this generation of kids and students that we're working to raise and help become adults and help be Jesus followers as they take on this next generation of the church, they face an extreme amount of criticism, crazy pressure environment, competition like never before. I mean, if you just look at it, think about what social media has done to our kids. Today's the first time in history where a kid can literally count and quantify how popular they are. See, when I was in 7th grade, I chose to wear some K-Swiss, the white shoes with the stripes on them. I wasn't like a social trendsetter, but I chose to wear them anyways. I had to walk around middle school in 7th grade wondering, are these cool or not? But today a kid, they just go online and count. Did I get retweeted? How many people liked it? Did anyone share my post? And if not, they quickly take it down. Because kids today, they can't only count how popular they are, they can quantify how often they get rejected as well. Because social media allows them to compare their stats with everyone else's stats. That's a lot of judgment. Think about youth sports today. What once was rec ball with the community involved and didn't cost a whole lot of money has transformed dramatically, and it's all now travel ball and club teams, and it costs a whole lot of money, and they're getting involved younger and younger and younger. And I found out that kids are quitting sports today by the age of 13. 13 years old. You don't even peak physically by the age of 13, and kids are quitting because they're burned out or because they weren't good enough yet. Talk about that pressure. We didn't face that when we were kids, but our kids do today. That's why they need a nurse and a medic way more than a judge or a critic. And do you know about the cases and cases and cases of bullying going on in our schools today? Stats say 1 in every 4 child in school, elementary school, middle school, high school, 1 in 4 is bullied. Online, physically, emotionally, 1 in 4. And guess what? That stat is conservative because most cases of bullying go unreported. More than 50% are unreported. So chances are, if you know a kid in school, they've been bullied and they're afraid to say it. See, the table matters. Our kids need to hear from you, mom and dad, aunts and uncles. You're the nurse and the medic that is positioned in their life to give them what they need. See, a nurse and a medic, they don't just coddle you. They don't just love on you. No, they care for you and point you to health. They're there for you when you need them most. That's you, mom and dad. That's you, grandma and grandpa. Big brother, big sister, around the table. That's your moment. To tell these kids, to tell our students that being different is okay. That they are loved. That they're already beautiful. That rejection isn't going to last forever, and don't you dare let that become who you see yourself as. That they're smart. That they're perfect just as they are. That God is with them through all of these years, and He is not distant. That's what our kids and our students need to hear. And that's what we get to give our families and all of our church family when we sit down and have a meal together. Because everyone needs a nurse and a medic way more than a judge or a critic. See, if you ask me, I think there's enough criticism in our world. There's enough judgment. There's enough declaration and publicity of all of our rejection and who we aren't. And there's not enough encouragement. See, the table at a family meal setting is where we can download our day. It's a place that's safe, where we can recline and rest and reframe all the ugliness that we've experienced during our day. It's a place to regroup, to rejoin and reunite as a family and get back to what we're supposed to be devoted to because we need it. So what if? What would happen if we, as a church, would take family mealtime seriously? What if we would truly start to believe that our kids, they need less experiences in this world and more relationship? And that a mealtime together is where we can deliver that as parents, as small group leaders, as aunts and uncles, as guardians, as neighbors. Matter of fact, this whole thing that I'm talking about right now, this isn't just for families. It matters a whole lot for families, but it also matters for our church family as well. Because I imagine if you're here and you're single and you don't have kids, you still face criticism. You still experience rejection and judgment and pressure, and you still need a place that's safe to regroup, to join in with people who love you and care for you and who will point you to health. So what if? What if we took it seriously? You know, this idea of a family meal, of reinstituting time together in our day that's intentional, that we're devoted to, that matters to us. It's something I like to call an orange concept. See, orange is the color you get when you mix red with yellow, right? We learned that in elementary school. But in our church here, specifically at Northway, orange is the philosophy that drives everything we do in Family Matters. You see, red represents the family. It's the heartbeat. It's the major institution that is the heart of our world, right? And yellow represents the light of truth that the church possesses. And what orange is, it's those two working together, in sync, in step, towards the same goal. Orange is realizing that what happens at home with our kids and with our families is actually more important than what happens here at church on a Sunday morning. See, do you realize in a given year, in any given year, at its best, we in Family Matters Ministry, we will spend about 40 hours with your children. Retreats, small group times, Sunday morning, different activities, 40 hours. But you as parents who live with them, who raise them, you get 3,000. Simple math, right? The partnership makes sense. We have got to work together. We have got to leverage meal times to talk about everything we're learning during church times. That's orange. That's our call as parents. Because our kids need it. So back to my question. What if? What if we took a hard look at our devotions and shifted some things around? What if we tried to prioritize relationships with our kids more than the experiences that we go and pay for? What if we shifted our devotion around to having a meal together at home around a table rather than in our car on our way to something? What if our devotion shifted so dramatically that we spent time with eye-to-eye contact over food and while laughing rather than eye contact with our screens? What if? And what if that's what our kids actually wanted from us? You know, there's a movement going on in Australia right now, and it's being led by a company called Master Foods. And what they're committed to is reuniting and reigniting the family around meals together. They understand that schedules and life's busyness and all of it has gotten out of hand, and that they've lost something sacred and special and meaningful. And that the younger generation is the one that's paying the price for that. So they set out to create a movement around the family table with meals together. And they started conducting some interviews of families, of kids and parents, and they asked one single question: if you could, who would you like to have a meal with? I want you to take a look and see how it turned out. Check it out. Here's that commercial.
If you could have dinner with anyone, living or dead, who would you choose?
Kylie Minogue.
Marilyn Monroe.
Oh God, I wouldn't have a clue.
I know, straight up. Paul Hogan.
Kim Kardashian.
No. I'd like to have dinner with Justin Bieber.
What? He's not coming to my house.
So,
I'd have Bob Hawke.
Dave Hughes.
Barry Humphries.
Jimi Hendrix.
People who have made a difference in the world, maybe Nelson Mandela at the dinner table.
I don't know what he's going to say. I'm scared.
If you could have dinner with anyone in the world, who would you choose?
Probably our whole family, like our whole extended family. Mum and Dad. Mum and Dad. Does it have to be a celebrity? Could it be family?
We love it. We talk about how school is. We ask Mum and Dad how their day was.
Family.
Yeah, Mum and Dad.
Family. Who would you like to have dinner with?
They just want to be with us while they're eating food, which is pretty cool.
They see us above everything. I'm gonna get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bit of a message in it for me.
Yes.
What are we having for dinner?
Other than a few obscure Australian celebrity references like Paul Hogan, Crocodile Dundee, right? That video makes a pretty strong case. See, it turns out our kids aren't as interested in all the experiences we're trying to provide for them. They just want to have dinner with us. So what if we changed our devotion? When my wife Brooke and I got married, you know how you do that unity candle thing that was really popular? They didn't have the sand and all the other cool stuff that they do now. We had a unity candle and a soloist, right? And so we lit the candle, and then we knew that that was going to be a pretty fast moment, and the soloist still had to sing and finish their song, right? Yeah, it's kind of an awkward moment at weddings, right? And so we were thinking, rather than stand there and hold each other's hands and like smile while everybody stares at us, we didn't really want to be stared at anymore. So we thought, let's take a moment and go and thank everybody in our life who was important. And so while the song was playing, we stepped down off stage and we went and thanked our parents, and we thanked all of our bridal party because they played such a significant moment and role in our lives. And I'll never forget what my dad said to us. He looked at us, and I thought he was going to say, "Attaboy," or maybe pat me on the backside and say, "Good job," or "Good game," right? "I love you, I'm proud of you," anything. All he looked at us and said was, "Always eat dinner together." And at the moment, I didn't get it. Because to be completely honest, I was thinking only about the honeymoon, right? But now that I have kids, it starts to make sense. Mealtime is sacred time that our kids need and deserve from us. So what's it look like? I mean, do you have to go and check Pinterest out to figure out how to make this a special moment and make it so unbelievably that everybody will tweet about it and reshare it or take pictures on Instagram? No, I don't think so. You see, as I'm learning, dinner time and family mealtime around the table isn't so much about the ambiance or the lighting or the music or the table setting. It's not even about the food and if it's good or not. It's about the company. It's about having a safe place to recline and have great conversation. And so I challenge you, as you have that, as you look at your devotion, I challenge you to listen for 3 things as the conversation strikes up. As people are comfortable to be influenced, and as our kids start to open up about their day and what they think and what's actually going on inside of their heart, I'm saying listen for these 3 things. Listen for how they're answering and asking those 3 questions that we start when we're really young and keep asking the rest of our lives. You listen for priorities. Because life isn't all about just fun, is it? You listen for what they're devoted to and what they're giving all their attention to that maybe they shouldn't be giving as much attention to. You listen for those elements that we all as adults put in the word cloud just a few weeks ago during our Idols series. Because that stuff doesn't just start when you're old, it forms when we're young. Listen for it. Head it off at the pass. You know how kids only want to play? Find out what our kids should be giving more attention to. Make sure their lives are balanced. Listen for their priorities because they matter and habits form and so do expectations when we're young. Scriptures, when you look at it, it's pretty clear. In John, it says, "Dear children, little children, keep yourselves from idols." That term children there is endearing. It's because I love you, pay attention to what you're prioritizing. Second thing I like to listen to is I have meals with my kids, and as I get together with our church family and we do life and we talk, I try to listen for that mirror. Those things about identity. I try to listen and see, how do they see themselves? How do they handle rejection? Are they paying more attention to social media and what it says of them? Or their coach, or their boss, or their teacher, or the most popular kid in school? Does that voice matter more than God's? I want to know, how are they viewing themselves? Do they see themselves as God sees them or as someone else sees them? Because there's a drastic difference there with very real consequences, some of which we are all dealing with right now today, right? I mean, let's be honest, if we don't get this identity thing locked and secured in who Jesus Christ says we are, we will be living the rest of our lives trying to please people and perform for people. That's why family meals matter. Because it's a safe place where we can find out what our kids think of themselves and help them see what God thinks of them. In Proverbs, it says, "The fear of man is a snare. But whoever trusts in the Lord is safe." We've got to make sure that man's opinion of them is not turned all the way up with God's voice muted. Here's the third thing I like to listen for. It's back to those keys, right? It's how they're dealing with their independence and how are they connected, right? Do they have the right kind of influences in their life? You can hear this when all of us talk to each other, right? You can see if someone's giving them some not so good advice. That someone's filling their head with the wrong kind of stuff and it's not really what's true and I'm starting to believe what they say and that's really not the company I should be keeping. I listen for my kids and I found out, are they connected with the right kind of people and what kind of friends do they have and what are their friends saying to them? And I also try to balance it out. Are they trying to do life alone? Disconnected. Because you've probably found out at some point in your life, doing life alone is deadly. Because we're all just as sick as our secrets. To listen for their connectedness. Because their friends, my friends and your friends, will really determine the quality and direction of our lives. It says in Proverbs that it's important to be connected and to have great friends. Whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. Find out what they're doing when they get the choice of where to go and who to be with. Because connectedness is important. And the family meal is a place that matters, to hear truth in a way that matters. You know, as you listen for the ball and their priorities and the mirror and their identity and the keys and their connectedness, as you're trying to hear all this stuff and piece together where they're at in life and what they're facing and what pressures they're experiencing and how they're reacting to it all. And when it's finally your turn to speak and you've got to say something, you've got to be able to respond, I'd encourage you to do one single thing. Tell your story. That's it. You don't got to preach to them. God and the Holy Spirit takes care of all that stuff on the inside. Just tell your story. Give them a very real example that they can see and touch and follow and ask questions of. There is nothing more important and powerful than a mom or dad saying, here's my story. Here are my warts and all. These are my successes. This is what daddy did, and this is where mommy messed up, and where daddy failed, and where daddy made it and got it right, and this is what I learned, and here's what I wished I would have done differently. Those stories that I've heard from my dad are priceless. You see, experience doesn't have to be the only teacher. That's our role as parents, as those who are paving the way before the next generation. The Apostle Paul, when he writes in Thessalonians, here's what he says. He says, so, being affectionately desirous of you, meaning I loved you so much. You mattered so much to me. We were ready to share with you not only the gospel of God, but also our very selves, because you'd become very dear to us. Meaning I loved you enough to tell the whole truth. To be authentic, to open up my life and let you see inside. You see, around the table this summer, as we have more family time, as we gather with church family, as we move like the early church did from the formal gatherings here at all of our campuses to the informal moments of reclining and resting around the table in our homes, all I'm saying is this summer, give your guests, your family and your church family, a front row seat to God's redemption story in your own life. Just tell your story and let God do the rest. I trust and hope that if you're willing to take that step, if you're willing to rearrange your devotion and take a look at your schedule and your money and your priorities and that single-minded steadfastness you have as a follower of Jesus Christ, I trust it will lead to great conversation, great laughs, and many more meals together. And I trust you will find the nurse and medic that you need through the body of Christ. Across all of our campuses, would you join me and stand to your feet as your campus leader comes up on stage and closes our time together?